Guys, hello and welcome to another session of Dial M for Films. We are going to be chatting with Bejoy, who's right here with us, but I want to introduce him and I want to do a slightly longish introduction for Bejoy because, Bejoy Nambiar broke into our collective consciousness in slow motion with Khoya Khoya Chand, a beautiful number, an action sequence from his first feature, Shaitan. And at least that's how it happened for me. He's had a bit of a unconventional journey. Born and brought up in Bombay, he studied in Bangalore, where he did a lot of theater. His father used to have a textile business, which Bijoy was supposed to join. So Bijoy went and did an MBA from a university abroad, came back, joined that business. But there was always this abiding love for cinema that I want to segue here a little bit and say that, I know we are here to talk about collaboration. So hat tip today for Bijoy's first collaborator in his journey, which is his father, who's not with us anymore. But he was so encouraging of Bijoy taking up films or segueing into films. And therefore, it is wonderful that we are doing this session on Father's Day. So when Bijoy wanted to get into films, Bijoy decided that instead of a university, he's going to kind of experience his institute and learn on the job. And that's how his first short film Reflections happened. But Bijoy, first of all, welcome and thank you so much for making time for us. Um, I want to start by just asking you, how does someone who's never worked in film get Mohanlal to say yes to his first short film?
First of all, thank you so much. Thank you so much for giving me this opportunity, giving me this platform. And I consider it a massive privilege that I've been in such good company. I see all the speakers before me and the speakers are going to be coming after me. So I think I'm in great company here. So thank you so much for giving me that platform and opportunity.
Joy, pleasure, privilege and pleasure. Thank you.
So how did I get Mohanlal? Well, he was on my wish list. I mean, I've seen him growing up. I had seen so many of his films. So he was always an actor that I always looked up to. And if I was going to start in films, I said, why not let me start with the best and let me try. So I started by approaching and try to figure out how to approach him. So I did a lot of calls, I made a lot of calls and tried to figure out who will be the right person to get through to him. And finally, I got one contact. And that one contact was Mr. Suresh Balaji. That's Mr. Mohanlal's brother-in-law, who was also a producer in Chennai. And he asked me about my background, and I told him about my business background. So he was not sure whether I'll be able to pull off a film like that. And he asked me, are you confident that you're going to be meeting him and you're going to be able to convince him? I said, it's worth a shot, no harm in trying. And he kind of set up the meeting for me. I think from the time I wanted him to the final meeting, it took me about some 5-6 months to finally get that audience with him, to get that meeting. And once that meeting happened, I think I went to meet him on a set. He was shooting something. And Mambara Kalam was the film, I think, if I'm not mistaken. I went with my friend who's a massive Mohanlal buff. So I went with him, and my friend was more concerned about getting a picture with him. And I was trying to just make sure I have enough time to talk to him about my story. And I managed to narrate him my story. And he heard the story, and he took about a minute, and he said, when do you want to do it? So it didn't register that he actually said yes. The first thing he said was, when do you want to do it? So it didn't. So I really wanted to ask him, so you really want to do this? I didn't ask him that. I said that whenever you say so, whenever you're free, tell me, I'll figure it out. So, and he was so sweet. He said, you know what, I'm going to be coming to Bombay in another 2 months time for an event. Can we schedule it around then? You think 2 months is good enough? I said, it's great. I'll manage within that. And he actually said, you don't even have to pay for my flight ticket because those event guys will pay for my flight ticket. So I'll come. That's what he did. He was so sweet about it. And I think within just getting the meeting was a difficult part, but convincing him was pretty easy. And he was an absolute dog. He was really, really sweet about it, considering that we didn't even have a team to kind of take care of him, and we didn't have a team. I didn't even have a single lady on the phone and everything. So, but he was extremely sweet about it, and really humble.
Vijay, right after Reflections, and I'm not even getting into the learnings from Reflections simply because of the fact that we will speak about that when we go forward in the session. But you were also simultaneously, looking to anchor yourself, within a ecosystem where you could learn more, right? You could prepare yourself as a filmmaker, get more experience, and you were trying to get on board with Mani Ratnam, become a part of Madras Talkies. And that opportunity came when you were hired as a AD on Guru.
Right.
And so I wanted you to, I wanted you to tell us something about that entire experience, because you were on Guru from scripting till the time that the DVD came out, right? And there was a
Yeah.
paradigm shift that happened, that has led you to believe that collaboration is one of the most magical things that can happen to you in your process of filmmaking. So if you can tell us a little about that.
So I had actually applied for a job at Madras Talkies way before even Reflections happened. I applied a couple of times and I never heard back from them. And I kept trying, hoping that one day I'll get a call. And I must be one of those, 100 or thousands of other aspirants who wanted to kind of join. But I never got a call. I managed to bump into Mani sir at a wedding, I remember, just randomly at my friend's wedding in Chennai. He was there and I couldn't believe it. I couldn't care two hoots about my friend. I actually went straight to Mani sir and I said, "Sir, I've sent my application some 10 times. Can you please look at it and will you give me a chance? I want to come up." And he was suddenly taken away. He was like, yeah, sure, sure. And very sweet. So, and in that Hadbadi, I actually asked him for an autograph also. And while leaving, I went back to him and said that, "Sir, please look at my application. My name is Bejoy Nambiar. Please make sure that you have a look." And I was under the impression that that conversation will actually help me get an interview. It never did. I never got a call. Even after that meeting, I never got a call. So, post Reflections, I sent the DVD and the application again, and this time I got a call. And Sudha Kongra, who was the chief AD at that point, she called me for the first preliminary interview, and then I got a interview with Mani sir. So that Reflections became my calling card to get into Madras Talkies. And it was so weird that I was actually in the middle of prepping for my second short film, and I was about 10 days away from shooting my second short film when I got the call. And I told him that. I told Mani sir that I'm actually about to start shooting my second short film. And he was like, first thing actually, what Mani sir told me is, "Why do you want to do this? You should not be an AD. AD is like the worst job ever." I said, "Then why did you call me for the interview?" He said, no, if you're already starting to make films, then go ahead and make films. You don't need to become an AD. And I said, no, it's something I really want to learn. When I told him that I'm about to start my second short film, he said that, "Okay, do one thing. You finish that and then join us on this film. By the time we'll be in post-production. So you can join us by the end of it." And I actually considered it. So I remember I went back and spoke to my DOP, Mukul, who was shooting my second short film. And this is something I'll never forget. And I've seen this trait in a very few people. And I think I don't think I've ever spoken about Mukul in that light. Mukul was the DOP who was supposed to shoot Reflections also, who was going to shoot my second short film. He told me that, "Don't let go of this opportunity. Forget the short film. We can always do it. You have been called. Take it up. Just don't even think twice." And I told him, "But we have prepped already so much. We're supposed to start shoot in 10 days." He said, "Let it go. Look at the bigger picture. This is something you need to, focus on." So even though it was something that he would have, got to do with me, but he told me that this is a better option for me. And I took his words to heart, and I scrapped my short film. I took up the job, and I think it was the best decision I made. And because, like you said, I was part of Guru from the scripting till the DVD came out, and I was part of the entire spectrum of that filmmaking. And Reflections was like almost like a, the way Reflections came about is I had zero experience in filmmaking, so I just kind of surrounded myself, and I got some very experienced people to come on board to help me out. So Beat Setu, the DOP, who had already done a lot of ad films, and he had done Tigmanshu's Charas at that point.
Yeah.
So he was a huge ass. He was like the co-director for me for Reflections. Akif Ali, who was introduced to me by by my actor Juhi, who was part of Reflections. Aki came through Juhi to me, and Juhi herself, a very well-known theatre actor. Elam was a very well-known theatre actor. So all those people, with their collective experience, really helped make Reflections for me, because I had, like I said, zero experience. So they really helped shape. In fact, I think maximum amount of effort went in. The guys who kind of really shaped it was Akiv and Setu, because they really gave vision to what I wanted to say in the story, and I enjoyed that experience. But they really helped me make it. And I thought, then this is how films are made. This is how, you just get all these people together and you'll be able to make it. It's kind of a journey like that. But then Guru is what kind of opened my eyes up. Guru was a completely new experience for me, and because I was coming from that short film mentality, and I saw this big massive film being put together, and all these different people coming together, and they were like the best of the best in the industry. They had Rajiv Menon, cinematography. We had Sameer Chanda doing production design. We had Rahman sir doing music. So it was all like the best of the best coming together. Actors Abhishek and Mithun Chakravarti and Aishwarya Rai. So for me, I was just so starstruck by not just the actors, but even the technicians. I was like almost like a fly on the wall, just watching everything. And what I thoroughly enjoyed was how the script, which was there on paper, how I saw each head of the department, each cast member, each member under the head of the department, each people in every department, how they took onus for the script, and how they were able to push the envelope, how within their spectrum, how they were able to push that harder and give vision to what Mani sir wanted to do. And I saw that in in a very close perspective. So because I was part of initially, I think there were some 8 ADs on Guru. And within the first week, 10 days, there were just 3 of us left. So it was just 3 of us. And then in another month, it was just 2 of us then. So it was just 2 of us handling the entire thing. So the responsibilities were too many. And I think it was a great opportunity for me, because I got to experience everything. So I started off by just handling background action and pushing the cows in frame in the right time and pushing the junior artists in the right. And that was my first job, first part of the thing. Then suddenly I was taking on art. I was taking on locations. I was taking on properties and costumes and everything. So it was multiple responsibilities given, which I thoroughly enjoyed. I was learning on the job, and I got to watch everything from a very close perspective. Like how for example, how Sameer Chanda, I remember him sketching the tram, him sketching the going to this empty barren studio parking lot, and him planning where the trams are going to be, him planning where the balcony is going to be, him planning where the traders market is going to be. So he had actually sketched it out, and seeing that sketch come to life like in a month's time, and just seeing that magic kind of happening, seeing Rajiv Menon kind of lighting the frame and using a certain kind of light to enhance the period. So I took all those key elements from there, all the lessons I learned about how important detailing is for the period, how VFX was so beautifully integrated into the film, how Rajiv Menon worked so closely with the VFX team to give the feel of old Bombay. So for me, it was just an amazing experience just to kind of soak in all that. So I took all that and I took all the resources that I could juice from Madras Talkies. And in my next short film, I kind of used all of that. I just pulled every resource possible. I pulled everything that I learned from that. And I said, let me go make my mega mammoth short film at that time, which is this short film that I made called Rahu, a 40-minute short film, which is never released because it got rejected by Berlinale, actually. Berlinale wanted it, but they said to cut down the length from 40 to 20, and I refused. And I never gave it. I never cut it down. Then after that, I never gave it anywhere else because I refused to cut down the length.
For festivals, Bejoy, it's an odd length.
It's an odd length, exactly.
It doesn't speak to the merit of the film.
Yeah.
But it's just a very odd length to have. Yeah.
I agree. A learning that I got from that. But Rahu for me was like this mammoth short film that I was trying to do. And I keep saying this with not much pride that it had the dubious distinction of that time being the most expensive short film made. my production manager used to tell me that कि कोई इतना पैसा खर्चा करके short film नहीं बनाता है. So I said that if nothing, this will be my show reel, and that's exactly what it was. I remember when I was pitching for Shaitan to different producers, so I had Reflections and Rahu DVD, and by then I had made another short film. So 3 short films I used to rubber band, and so my driver and my peon from my dad's office, they used to fill my car boot up with these 3 DVDs rubber banded. So every meeting I go, I used to give this 3 DVDs as my show reel, along with the script of Shaitan and one budget sheet ki ye hai. So it was like a proper docket made. So 3 DVD, script of Shaitan and the budget sheet. That was my presentation for Shaitan. So so that's how I used to do it. And because Rahu, I never released Rahu online, or that time there was no online, no platforms really available. But because it was not accepted in festivals, I kind of let it go. But there was but as an experience, it was a great experience because, like I said, all the resources. Sudha, who actually hired me in Guru, she was my chief AD. She was my senior. She came and helped out and did costumes for me in Rahu. Ruman, another AD, a friend of mine, senior again, he came and acted in Rahu. I had the line producer of Guru, Ganpati Subramaniam sir. He came and did the production for me in Rahu. So all these people came together, and so it was all this goodwill that I earned from working on Guru, and all these people that I was able to, and of course, like I said, because Rahu itself was also period film, so all the learning that I had from Guru, I kind of used it there. So it was a great experience for me to kind of use all that and learn from that. But I think the biggest takeaway from Guru for me was, of course, like I said, seeing all this at very close perspectives was definitely a great learning. But the immense learning that I had from Guru was, the biggest takeaway, like I said, is the way Mani sir trusted his cast, his technicians, and how he kind of empowered them with that trust. Because I in our heads, or rather, I guess I always had this thing that these big directors who have kind of, they're auteurs, they're kind of known for their body of work, they have a unique, distinctive style. So they might be like, very hard ass about what they want and very tunnel vision about this is how shit should be done, and they'd be forcing their ideas on to people. But it was so totally the opposite that I saw, and I'm so glad that I was part of that experience of seeing that happen in real time, and how he trusted his technicians, and that trust also came from a place of maybe they like, for example, Sami Chand had already worked with him in Uruguay, so there was a comfort there. But the costume person, it was the first time she was working with Manisa. Amira, I think it was the first time Amira was working with Manisa. But how she was able to earn that trust from him, and she was able to take flight because of it. She was able to give those characters depth and vision as per what she thought would have been great, and how he let her do that. So I saw that, and that was a very big learning for me, because I always thought that, and you keep hearing this thing that directors are the captain of the ship, captain. I mean, maybe it is, but then seeing him kind of giving that power to these people and letting them help in that in creating that vision was a big learning for me, and that is something I continue to take. That is something I continue to do with every project of mine. So in fact, it's every film that I take on, every project that I take on, I always I kind of aspire to learn as much as possible from every project that I do. And learn, when I say learn, not just by making the film, but also from the people who come on board. Also to learn from the people who come on board. So, and that's, again, not restricted to technicians as such, but the actors also, and the teams that are working under each department. So I really look forward to, which is why I guess I'm very passionate about it, and which is why I chose this subject also to speak about how it is, for me personally, how collaboration is very key.
Bejoy, the thing is, I'm going to break format a little bit and just ask you before we, actually get into the departments that you did want to speak about and talk about, and with examples, tell us how, the collaborative process that is so, that has worked for you and that you really advocate has worked to enhance work that you've done, right?
Right.
But, learning this at the time that you just done your first short film, you got the opportunity to work on Guru and wanted to explore this path in terms of the relationships that you built for yourself as a new filmmaker. So what are the different things that you put into place to kind of get the kind of collaborators that you want, should come on board that you can actually trust, because it's a fine line that one traverses. There
Right.
has to be one vision, there has to be one voice that eventually the narrative serves, right?
Right.
And usually that is the voice of the filmmaker. So when a new filmmaker is there who's anyways trying to find his or her voice in the process, when you give this kind of power to the people who are collaborating with you, how do you navigate that? How do you create that fine balance, of empowering people and yet retaining the final vision of the film?
So, like you rightly said, it's a very fine line. Um, see, again, I'll only be able to talk about from my personal experience. So, with me, luckily, all the feature work that I've done, almost all feature they have been stories that I have kind of written. So they were created by me. The ideas from me, and then I worked with other writers. And so there is that the spine of it, or rather the core of it, is kind of crystal clear in my head. So I know what I'm trying to do within that framework, and then I go. It's almost like how you get a casting director to cast for your film, and you give this brief for the cast. It's similarly, I think you have to kind of cast your team also. So I go choose my team again. Something I learned from my previous experience in Guru, how certain people who would be right, who would do justice to your script. So you kind of cast for that. You kind of shop for those people. You have a wish list, of course, and of course there are restrictions like budget. The restrictions can be any, but then you still have a wish list, and you kind of go and cast for who would be the right person for this, who would be the right person for, say, a costume, who would be the right person to do the production design, who would be the right person to do the camera. So you kind of put a small wish list together, and you kind of approach the people that you want to work with, and they can be because of maybe the body of work that you have seen before and that you have liked, and you feel because of that they'll be able to do justice to your vision, or the lack of also. Like, I'll give an example. When I was working with Madi, my first cameraman for Shaitan, I remember this Bombay producer telling me that I should work with a cameraman from Bombay because the film is set in Bombay. You should work with a cameraman from Bombay. And this Madi has never shot in Bombay, so why would you want to work? So I said, what you're saying as a bad thing is actually an advantage. The fact that Madi has not shot in Bombay is that it'll be an advantage for me, because then he'll look at Bombay very differently. He will lens it very differently, and that's what I wanted. I wanted a very fresh take to what I wanted to do in Shaitan. And I'd seen Madi's work in Vail, and I was blown away by it. This very rustic, raw film set in a small village, and I knew that this is a very interesting guy and I would want to collaborate with him, and it worked in my favor, getting someone like him on board for Shaitan, because he kind of took to it like a fish to water kind of thing. He kind of really changed the whole dynamic of what we wanted to do. He took it and just flew with it. So, like I said, it is very important to cast for that each person in your team, and you can never be fully sure. You can never be fully sure whether it'll work or not, and you can never be fully sure whether, like you said, you're open to opinions. You're letting them, empowering them to give you that, to work with you in a certain way. You create that atmosphere. It is very, very important to create that atmosphere so that they feel empowered enough to come and voice out what they feel about the subject. But at the same time, like I said, if the idea is crystal clear in your head, and you know what you want to take and what you don't want to take, and then it's a balance that you keep playing with that balance time and again. You never let it tilt in any direction, and that's a fine line. But you kind of traverse that as you go. But coming back to the flip side of it, what you just asked, wherein you go and work with someone you're not sure of, and it turns out wrong. That also happens a lot of times. It happens with actors, it happens with technicians. Sometimes you can, if it happens early on, you're able to do something about it and do some kind of damage control. In fact, I am the perfect example of someone being completely wrong for a certain job. When after working on Guru, I was called back to work on Ravan as an AD. And I went and started working on the prep of Ravan and everything. But somewhere very early on in prep, there was some issue, and I was suddenly told to take on the line production job. I had never done production work. I just seen people work in production. So suddenly I was given this mantle and said that now I'll have to do line production for them. And I'll just give a small incident. I remember during the early prep on Ravan. If you remember in Ravan, the first shot of Ravan is Abhishek standing on top of a cliff and diving into the water below. So I've gone to see the location with Mani sir, and I've gone to see the location with Mani sir, and we walked up to the edge of the cliff, and my girlfriend then, who's my wife now, Sheetal, she had gifted me this really expensive, I think it's the most expensive sunglasses ever I had, some 15,000 rupees of sunglasses. I was wearing those sunglasses, and I never bought anything as expensive after that. So I went with Mani sir, and we both were standing at the cliff looking down at the water, and as we both were staring down at the water, my sunglasses just dropped down, tuck, just goes straight down to the water, and it just goes on, and I have like I'm just seeing 15,000 rupees just fall into the water, and I actually literally want to dive like Abhishek. I want to dive into the water, but I just stand there and watch. And Manisha looks at me and says, "Those were your glasses?" I said, "Yeah." And Manisha just smiles and walks away, and I'm just staring there at those glasses. So my experience in working on Ravan as a line producer, that was kind of an ominous thing. The trajectory was there. I went like that because I was so bad at it. I was so bad at the production part of it because I didn't have any experience. So I was learning on the job, but I was making a mess of things because I didn't know how to do things. I was being cushioned, of course, by the producer Sharda, Trilok, by Ganpati Subramaniam, by Fen. These are the other people who were working, and they were very sweet enough to cushion me and help me through my mistakes. But I knew what a bad decision it was. But again, great learning from me. But I was not the right person for the job. That's when I realized that. And like I said, that's why I said that I'm the perfect example of you have to get the right people for the right job. So I guess I hope I've answered roughly that's what you're asking me.
So Bejoy, I have a lot of stuff to ask, but I want to start with the process that we wanted to talk about, which is that how did this this thing that you discovered during your time with Mani sir, you wanted to collaborate with different people, wanted to cast a team. How did this cascade into your work becoming better? And if we were to, I know that you feel that way about anyone who's working with you, but if for the sake of brevity and some structure, if we were to take up, let's say, the 5 things, 5 chief processes in the making of a film, which is writing, cinematography, music, sound design, editing. How, if by examples, you could just illustrate to us as to how these different departments, different things kind of became better on your film because you got the right people to do this with you.
I can only talk about, like I said earlier, I can only talk about from my personal experience how each department has kind of helped enhance my vision for the script and how it has made me believe in this whole process of collaboration even more. Of course, I don't think there are this 5 or 6 key processes that make a film. There, right from all the big heads that you mentioned about. Of course, they all play a very huge role, but I think there are too many people, too many variables that come together to make a film. It's almost like that saying that it takes a village to raise a child, right? It's almost like that. So a film is like that. It really takes a lot of people to come together, and I think that's where my MBA skills kind of came into play. It really helped me because direction at the end of the day is also a lot about people management. So it really helped me kind of bring all those people together to really realize the vision that I have for a certain film, certain project that I'm doing.
That's a very important point. I think a director is required to have that vision. The director is required to have that, final, sort of creative roadmap for
Right.
what this film is going to be. But I think what a lot of aspiring filmmakers and film professionals, they will realize on the job that you have to have tremendous people skills, like you said, to get 150 people to buy into that vision and work towards it.
Work towards it, right? I completely really agree on that. What I again with every film, it all starts with an idea. It all starts with once you have that idea, once you have the script, and then you try and get a producer to back you on it. You try and get the cast that you want. Then one by one you start try and get the team that you want. So it all starts like brick by brick. You kind of put it all together. You start the process together. But because I was so spoiled from my first short film itself, when I say spoiled, only because I see a lot of aspiring filmmakers who make a shot just for the sake of making a shot. I keep telling them that you have to treat your short film like it's your feature. You have to treat it like it's that is, maybe you will never get a chance to make another one again. So that's how you have to treat that short film. And I think that's one very big learning that I took on from my first short film only for every project. Man, I really try my best to surround myself with the right people for the film, for the who do justice to the film, and not just do justice, who would take ownership for the film in such a way when, in fact, that's the part I really enjoy. I enjoy it so much when I see a technician, when I see an actor suddenly talk about, so it'll be one of those prep meetings, or it'll be one of those maybe on shoot days, when they suddenly talk about a certain scene or a certain character, a certain mood, and they will give new shades, new colors to it, and new things to it, which I might not even have thought of. And they have taken it, they have internalized it so much that they're able to give a complete new dimension to it. And I enjoy that so much. And 9 out of 10 times I always take it. I take it and I use it and I run with it. And it's very rare that I don't, because it's something that I might have not even thought of when I'm writing it, when I'm imagining it. It's come organically from them. And I try to use that. I try to soak it in and use that. So, which is why, again, coming back to that, you have to really surround yourself with the right people. And so what I keep telling these short filmmakers is something even I live by, which is that every project I do, it's almost like an impossible task I set for myself, by saying that, I might not be able to, I might not get another opportunity. Like, I have to treat this film as my last. Only if I do that will I do it with all conviction, and my heart will be like, fully into it. Because if I don't treat it like that with that much importance, and if I just treat it just another project, it will automatically show in my work. And it has happened. Luckily, not my features, but in some of the other work that I'm not really done with full conviction. I did a banyan ad. I was not convinced on it. Obviously, I will not be convinced on it. So that. By the way, it was with Salman Khan. It just a really bad ad. But that's the point. Even if it was a banyan ad, I should have done it with conviction. I should have done it with like, I'm not going to get a job after that. So I should have just gone at it and treated it like that. And that's what I believe, that anything you take on needs to be given that much importance, needs to be treated like that. So taking that cue, I'll just talk about a couple of heads, and give some examples. I'm going to talk about actors. I'm going to talk about editors, cinematography, sound, music and sound design. So how certain instances from my last 15 years of work that I've done, how all these elements have kind of enhanced and made me discover something new, which was not there initially, which was not there in paper, which is not there when I planned it. So I think I'll start off only with the actors part of it. And I did this one-hour film with Z called Dubara, with Manav Kaul and Parvati Omnagutan. And Mani sir says that it is one of my only films where nobody is killed, there's no blood, no gore. So he asked me if everything was okay with me when I made it. So this is one of those films where there's no action, there's no people, there's no slow-mo fight on Khoya Khoya Chand or anything like that. Nobody's dying. So this is it's basically a simple story, though the narrative was a bit fractured and everything, but it was a simple story of a dysfunctional marriage. And weirdly, it was written as a Malayalam film. I'd written it for a Malayalam film, and I'd pitched it to Mohanlal sir also to make it in Malayalam, but it never materialized. And then when the opportunity came with Z, I made it in Hindi. And I remember I had approached Rajkumar Rao for the subject, and he was initially convinced. And then later on, one day he met me and he said that the main protagonist part was slightly negative. It was a negative part. The main protagonist was slightly negative in the way it was written. And he was not comfortable with the fact that he's coming across as negative by the end of it. And I said, but that's the nature of the story, the way the story is, and we'll have to play it as we go. But that what you're saying is right. It is written with that kind of an intention. So he was not comfortable. And finally I said, if you're not comfortable, don't worry about it. And we let it go. And then I spoke to Manav. And Manav came on board and we discussed, we chatted about it and everything. And when we started shooting, I remember the first 2-3 days of shoot went on by smoothly, and something was not working. Something was not hitting the right note for me. And it really bothered me what was the issue. So I started looking at the rushes, started looking at the scenes, and I realized that Mana was playing it very differently. Mana was playing the emotional beat for every scene. What I was trying to do and what he was doing was slightly off, was slightly different. And the whole negative angle was not coming through. In fact, it was going the opposite way. He was coming across slightly more vulnerable, and it was actually evoking sympathy, which was not the intention in the script. And though I realized that's what was happening, I realized that it was not the way I'd written it. But suddenly I realized that maybe it actually works. It was something new that I realized, which only because of the performance is why I was able to see that. It was not on paper, but Manav playing it like that made me realize that, oh, it could be done like this also. It can be done like this also. So it was a call that I had to take 3 days into the shoot, whether I let him continue or pull him back, reshoot those scenes, and play it the way the script is. So it was a big choice to make because it was going to change the entire tonality of the film, and it was a risk. And I remember I didn't even I thought of discussing with Manav, but then I said, let me not throw him off. Let him continue on the same path, same trajectory, and I let him do that. And it was going to change my story, but I actually it was a big decision, but I went with it, and I'm very happy I did that because it made me realize that things can change like this. Things can, and it is a decision you need to take, and then you need to stand by the decision. So it was a big call, and in hindsight, I'm very happy I went with that call because then suddenly the character is no longer black or white. There is certain gray to it, and you can actually root for him also. You can feel bad for him also. At the same time, you can feel disgust towards him also. So it was a good playoff that happened. So that was a big thing which happened, which again, it happened only because the actor decided to play it a certain way, and I decided to trust him with it.
Bejoy, what happens when, it was like you said, it was a very big call to take, right? Because he was playing it very differently and you saw it very differently. But because you felt that this worked for the film, and what he brought to the table, enhanced your vision or at least improved that. What happens to the other actors who are playing off, the character?
So you have to kind of guide them because they are, it's very important because they are also attuned to reading it and playing it a certain way. So then if this actor is throwing them off, you have to kind of push them also into that direction so that it doesn't jar. Luckily with me, for me, Parvati was able to catch on that, and Parvati, who was playing his wife, was able to catch on that, and she was able to play off with him. There were one or two scenes she was getting thrown off, but then, like I said, that whole, we had to have that dialogue with her and play it, make the scene work accordingly. So it does happen. You have to kind of coach the other. In fact, I remember I remember in Shaitan, Rajkumar's character, the cop. I told him right from the beginning that don't interact with any of them on set. Stay away from them. Don't talk to them. So that when you start doing the scene with them, they should be intimidated by you. They should not feel like you're their pal and you're doing a scene together. So even though there were workshops, in the workshop he always stayed away from them. He never talked to them. And initially they thought that he has a problem with them, which I said it's okay. Let them think that. So everything was fine. And I remember the scene where he comes and has a confrontation with all of them and he's making their demand. So just before we rehearsed the scene, we did once. And before the scene, Rajkumar and me spoke, and I said, there was no slap in the scene. In the scene, there's a slap which he slaps Gulshan, I remember. There was no slap on paper, there was no slap in the rehearsal. I told him, you want to take a chance, just slap him. And I'll roll, slap him. And he said, no, Gulshan will. I said, it's okay, I'll manage Gulshan, don't worry about it, go with it. And
he was just scared for his life. If you're Rajkumar Rao, you don't want to mess around with Gulshan.
So Rajkumar was hesitant, but then Rajkumar got excited by the idea of it. Yeah. And we knew that we had one take. So I again rehearsed the whole scene with all of them. I said that we might roll the entire scene. And we rolled the scene, and in the middle of the scene, there was this tight slap that Rajkumar gives to Gulshan. And everybody's shocked. So the shock you see in the scene is genuine because nobody knew that was going to happen, including Gulshan. In fact, if you watch the scene closely, you'll see that after the slap, as Rajkumar talks, there is a moment where Rajkumar moves again and Gulshan actually feels he's going to slap him again. So Gulshan goes like that. Gulshan braces himself like thinking that he was going to slap him again. So, and once I yelled cut, Gulshan actually went and hugged Rajkumar. He said, "That was fab. That was so good." So he was such a sport that he didn't mind it at all. But I don't advise this to any other filmmakers.
Yes.
Don't do this. I guess Manav was one example I want to talk about. And then, of course, I have to talk about Mr. Bachchan. Because but Mr. Bachchan was like, I remember when I was 3 years old and I got lost in Chowpatty Beach. My mom lost me. Like my mom I just walked away somewhere, and my mom and my dad were looking for me in Chowpatty Beach, and they found me standing opposite a poster of Lavaris. So my fanboy moment with Mr. Bachchan is since I was like I could barely walk. So to direct him is like a massive dream come true. So I just want to talk about this one moment in Wazir, where it's the scene where Neil comes and attacks. Again, I'll be giving some spoilers. People who have not seen the film, please, I'm sorry about it, but there'll be spoilers.
No, go for spoilers. I mean, this is a spoiler session.
Spoiler session, yeah. So Mr. Bachchan comes down on the wheelchair and he sees there's a fire in the chess table is on fire, and he turns around and he sees Neil talking to him, and he suddenly sees Neil. So this was the scene. And if you've seen Wazir, you know that Neil is actually an imaginary character. It's just part of Mr. Bachchan's alter ego. So in the scene, as we were rehearsing it, staging it, Mr. Bachchan, we rehearsed the whole thing, and then Mr. Bachchan had this habit because he was in a wheelchair. He used to keep rehearsing with his wheelchair to make sure that he hits the mark correctly. Suddenly, Mr. Bachchan tells me that that's not the mark I'm going to stop on. I'm going to stop on a different mark. And I said, okay, then tell me where do you want to stop? And he showed me a mark, and he called Sanu, the cameraman. He said, I'm going to stop here. Is that okay with you? And Sanu looked at me and said, yeah, it's fine. And he did a crossover there, and he kept rehearsing that mark again and again. And the scene is basically Mr. Bachchan comes to the mark, sees the fire, and turns around and sees Neil, and the focus shifts on Neil. And he kept rehearsing that mark again and again and again and again. And I was wondering, why is he doing that? But I let him do it, and I didn't question him. And he did the shot. He stopped at that mark. He turned around, looked at Neil. The focus shifted on Neil, and we canned the shot. Everything was great. And Mr. Bachchan had a smile, and good, and he was very happy with it. And Sanu had a smile, and I said, "What is this about?" I couldn't understand why they suddenly changed the mark and why everyone is just smiling. And Sanu had a smile too, and I was like, "What is it about?" And Sanu said, "Just if I think what he's doing, if I think what I'm thinking is right, he's doing something that you'll get to see later." Kind of thing. So it was almost like a very suspense building up inside me. So I kept waiting, and then later on, once the entire shoot was done, I called the editor and I said that just show me that shot again. And I kept watching the shot, and I saw that shot. I saw another shot. I couldn't really figure out what it was. And next day, it passed my mind. I didn't think about it. Next day, again, we were continuing the scene. Mr. Bachchan comes up to me and says, "So what did you think of it? Do you like it?" I said, "Yeah, it was a good shot, sir." "So you like the shadow?" I said, "That's when it struck me. Shadow? What do you mean by shadow?" And I saw that basically, if you see the image, he decided, Mr. Bachchan decided to mark a point wherein if he turns, only half his shadow comes on Neil. So it's like a half of him is Mr. Bachchan, half of his Neil. So it's almost like half his alter ego is right there. He's looking inside his soul kind of thing. So that was something intentional that he was doing to kind of subliminally convey a message. And that's what he thought. And I didn't even think of it. And he thought of it, and he told me that. And then Sanu came and said that even I didn't think of it. And when I saw him cast the shadow exactly on Neil, is when I realized that he's doing it intentionally. And again, I was just, my jaw just dropped when he told me. Then I went back and saw the shot, and I realized that's why I did it. And again, it just blew my mind that someone like him with so much experience, he was able to just see through that and able to do something so tiny, something so subtle, which might not even matter. But then I realized that how each one of those, be it an actor, be it a technician, how they have to kind of, once they take ownership of the story, they look at ways of what they can do to enhance that story. How within the story, they'll be able to do something as small as this, which can have a much more bigger impact. So that's something that I really enjoyed and learned from Mr. Bachchan.
Bijoy, how do you like before we move on to cinematography? I just wanted to know that how do you create? How does a director go about creating that atmosphere, that kind of culture on set, where people feel empowered to kind of take these chances, or
I
to
don't think it happens on set. I think it happens a lot during the prep time. Actually, the atmosphere kind of gets set during prep if you can afford the luxury of prep. Sometimes you can't, but most times, at least for me, for every project, it's during prep that I kind of get to know, or rather, understand the equation with each person, and that's why I really stress on with every film that I do that I try hard to spend more time with technicians and actors way before shoot, so that I know what their wavelength is. I know whether they're seeing the film the way that I'm seeing it. So it really happens on prep. So on set, it is just an extension of that. One or two more examples of casting, but again, I will not go into too much detail. These were last two examples. Manav and Mr. Bachchan was, of course, from my films. But I want to talk about how cast sometimes, like what Mr. Bachchan just did, how it changes a film altogether. Just give one example I wanted to give was once I spoke to Mr. Subhash Ghai, and he spoke to me about Vidhata. We had a chat about Vidhata, and he told me about how the Abu Baba's part. Abu Baba was played by Sanjeev Kumar, but how Abu Baba's part was supposed to be played by Amjad Khan, and it was written for Amjad Khan, and it was all fixed. Amjad Khan was supposed to play the part, and last minute something happened. He couldn't come for the shoot. He couldn't take it on, and so I think it was just a week or 10 days before shoot or something where they had to recast, and Sanjeev Kumar came into play. Sanjeev Kumar, who himself was not sure whether he could take on a role like that and do it, and Subhash Ghai was also taking a chance. And I think one of the first scenes they shot was a confrontation scene between him and Dilip Kumar. And Sanjeev Kumar, realizing that this is a part nobody has seen, and so he had kind of prepped extra hard for that scene. And he came and did this knockout of a take, the first take that he did. And Dilip Kumar forgot his lines. He just stood there and looked at him. Dilip Kumar forgot his line. An actor like Dilip Kumar, especially like that, forgot his line. And he called for cut. And he went back to Subhash Ghai and he says, next time, whenever I have a scene with him, you make sure you come and read with me before I go and perform with him, because I need to be better than him. That's what Dilip Kumar told Mr. Subhash Ghai. So that's the story that I like that story a lot, because if you see Vidhata now, you can't imagine anyone else doing Abu Baba. Because again, Sanjeev Kumar just took that role and ran with it, and he just gave it his all. And I like the fact that Subhash Ghai said that now you can't see Amjad Khan doing it. Now you can only see Sanjeev Kumar doing it. From actors, I think I'll just switch to cinematography. Right now, for cinematography, instead of starting off by talking about my own films, I'll actually start talking about some of the films that, I mean, a lot of films have made an impact on me, but I'll just pick some of them. I actually want to talk about Mazhar Kamran's work in Satya. And how when Satya came out, I remember, I think if it just before that, Ram Gopal Verma had done Mast and Dod, and it was all his camera work was suddenly becoming a bit too flashy. Mast and all, if you see, it was way too flashy, and it was going for bigger and bigger, and it was almost like a synthetic ad film kind of a feel that he went for. Even Dod had that kind of a feel. Then suddenly Satya happened. Satya almost was so guttural in its approach, so raw. In fact, though now I think in the film version that particular chunk has been cut out. There was a song called Gila Gila Pani, which is in the film now. There is only one part of it, 1 minute of it. Earlier there was a whole song video of it. I remember watching it in the theater, and the way the monsoon was captured, the Bombay monsoon was captured, so raw and so beautiful the way it was done. And weirdly, Satya had released during the monsoon in Bombay. So I remember watching the film in the theater and coming out and embracing the rain in Bombay. It was such an immersive experience. Like you felt every bit of, you felt the texture, you felt the rain, you felt every bit of what every bit of nook and corner, all the grime and dirt and everything, you could feel all that in every frame of it. You could see the sweat on Kallu Mama's head. You could see all that. So all those small things just made it such a it was a visual like a delight to watch a film like that, which again sometimes it can overshadow, sometimes it can overcompensate for the story. But here it was a perfect blend. It just complemented the storytelling so beautifully. You could see that the cinematography was taking the story several notches higher. There was a solid content on display, but the cinematography was using that and just propelling further. So that was Satya was definitely one of a kind for that. And there are many more examples I can give. Shyam Benegal's Trikal is another example that I want to talk about, which was path-breaking for its time, about the small Goan family, in the height of colonialism, and I think Shamsar had just done Mandi before that. And if you see Mandi, you see Trikal, they're just so visually so different. And you could see Ashok Mehta kind of almost inspired by the European cinema, I guess, of that time, and how the way he lit that small house. There's it was a I think that it was a heritage house kind of thing, small Goan house, and that family felt so intimate, so immersive. By the end of the film, you felt like you were part of that family. And even now, when you look at it, it is. I think it is. You see, some films are timeless. I think Trikal is one of them. It's one of those timeless films you can watch, just to admire the beauty in which it has been composed and shot. So. So these are some of the phenomenal examples I want to talk about. Again, I can go on talking about Mani Sir's films, about Santosh Shivan's work in Iruvar and Dalapati, and PC Sir's work in Nayagan and Agni Nakshatram. How each one of them complemented the story so beautifully. Be it Agni Nakshatram, where you had the story of these two stepbrothers warring, and they were shot against the sun, and everything is kind of high contrast and almost bleeding light, and be it the long takes of Iruvar, be it that circular. There's a beautiful poem in Iruvar, Unnodu Nanindal Oruru Marituliyum, which Prakash Raj and Tabu is a round circular shot. And at that time, I think they created the apparatus to take that one non-stop shot, which keeps circling around Prakash Raj and Tabu. So those are just, I think, again, for someone who wants to study camera work, these are films that I would just recommend that you just go watch to just understand how camera work just complements the storytelling. Savaria with Ravi K. Chandran's work, how Bhansali's dystopian world was just given wings, I think, with Ravi K. Chandran. He just created this. I mean, when the trailers came in, nobody figured out. I mean, everybody thought, "What is this all about?" And when you realize it's set in a dystopian world, and he shot it like that, and then almost every frame looks like a painting. The way he composed it and the way he lit everything. So these are films I like to revisit, like to watch, like to learn from, and these are again examples of how cinematography has just taken the storytelling several notches higher. With my example, I want to talk about again. I've been very fortunate that I worked with some phenomenal cinematographers right from the beginning. In fact, my first cinematographer was Setu. Setu, who's one of the biggest cinematographers in the country right now. Which I think last he shot was Dangal. For my short film, he won the best cinematography prize in the New York Film Festival. So I started off with Setu, and then I had, like I said, I was fortunate enough to work with so many phenomenal cinematographers, be it Madhi, be it Ravi Varman, be it P.S. Vinod, Randy, Sanu, who I've collaborated a couple of times, and Girish Gangadhar and Madhu Neelakantan, Sejal. All of them phenomenal in their own right. I want to just talk about Sejal. But before I talk about Sejal, I want to talk about how Sejal, who was supposed to do David. Sejal was supposed to do David on Story of David. And Sejal, I remember the first recce. I was, during the recce of David, I was also doing something. I was working on Rush, another series. So I was doing double duty. So I landed up late on the recce because I stopped to buy a cup of coffee. So I reached the recce late by some 15 minutes. And I had this cup of coffee, and Sejal just looked at me and he just said, "So you stopped for a coffee, that's why you're late." I said, "Yeah." sorry about it. And I said sorry, and I went about the recce and everything. And it just so happened the next recce, I was editing the whole night, and I fell asleep, and I didn't wake up. My ADs came to my house and they were ringing the doorbell. I passed out, and Sejal already reached the location, and one AD went to the location to keep hold Sejal on and make sure that he's appeased while somebody wakes me up. I woke up, I realized he's already there. It's going to take me an hour to reach there. So I told my AD to make some excuse to make him wait. I quickly got ready, and as I'm on my way, I think I reached Dadar, and he was in Mahim. I reached Dadar and I get a text message, good luck with your film. And I realized Sejal left the film. Sejal has quit the film. This is the second day of the recce. And we are actually 10 days away from shoot. So Sejal has left the film. And I texted, called, refused to take the call, he just messaged my production guy, says, please thank Bejoy for the opportunity. I don't want to work with him. So I was aghast. I was like, how can you leave my film? I'm only 10 days away. And he said, I can't work with you. So he taught me the value of time. He taught me that you better reach on time. So of course, I managed to get another DOP to shoot that portion, and it all worked out for me, thankfully. But years later, I went back to Sejal, and I wanted to work with him in solo. And the first thing he said is, will you come on time? I said, I will come on time. I'll be there on time. I promise you. And I made sure every recce, every day on shoot, I was there before him. And I made sure, I told 3 people to make sure that I was there, I should be there before him, and they should give him a separate time. They should give me a separate call time. So I reached there before him. Because on my set, though Dulquer was the hero, I treated Sejal as the hero. And I realized that I need to take care of him. Because I really wanted to work with him. I was so greedy that I wanted to work with him. And again, he threw a curveball at me before I went to him. He said that, and by then, Solo was 4 anthological stories, and going to be shot by 4 different cameramen. So I'd already shot 2 of them, and this was the 3rd. He came to me, he said that he wants to shoot the film in anamorphic lenses. And I realized if I did that, it would change the aspect ratio of the entire film. The other 2 stories would look different, this would look different, and the 4th would look different. And that would create a lot more complications in the final output. In the final satellite version, it will be a lot of problems that I'll have to face if I decide to indulge Sejal. So I almost decided against it. Everybody told me, my production told me, everybody convinced me to go against it. Then Sejal came back to meet me, and he narrated my story back to me in the way he saw it. And he said that, and he gave me such a beautiful narration of my own story. And he said that how I see this. And this was a story on fire. It was Solo had 4 elements, earth, wind, fire, water. And this was fire. And he spoke about the fire story, and he spoke about the color red, how red has to permeate almost every frame of the film, and how silence plays such a big part. And he said, the vision that I have for your film is this. And what you're telling me to do is this. And he said, don't push me down to that. If you can push whoever is pushing you to go the other way, push them, and let's explore that, because I know that this will be magical. So have that faith and let me try. And if you want, I can show you a test. And I said, okay, let's go do a test. But even before I did a test, he showed me a short film which he had shot, and I was already sold. When I saw the short film, I was sold. And it was the conviction of Sejal that pushed me to take that chance. It created a lot of complications for me for the final output. But in hindsight, I'm really glad that I went with that conviction, because I can see the way it enhanced that story. Personally, for me, that story works much better when I see it visually, because of the way Sejal saw it, because of the way what we had on paper. I can see what he did, how it multiplied in the visual, especially in that story. So that's an example I wanted to talk about. And how
it's a great example, Bejoy, because it also does a little amount of myth busting, which is that I mean, in popular parlance, we feel that if you're the director, you can just about do anything. But the fact of the matter is respect for collaborators, their time, and also being ego free and listening. These are the things that are very, very important when you have that opportunity and that responsibility of being the captain of the ship. It doesn't mean that you get this unlimited power that you can just about do anything.
Everybody was negating it. Everybody pushed me to go the other way, and then it becomes harder to fight. But then, like you said, it's that respect for that person's vision, because that person is also fighting to enhance your vision. So you have to kind of stand by that. So, like I said, I'm glad I did that, and it really helped better for me. I mean, it worked better for the film. So from here now, I guess I'll just jump to the next part, which is from cinematography. I think I'll go to editing, and my editing story can never be complete, because majority of my work has been edited by Srikar Prasad, we lovingly call Nani sir. And Nani sir, my question, Nani sir started with Guru, obviously. Mani sir was editing Guru with him, and I remember Mani sir calling me into the edit, and me sitting with Mani sir and Nani sir sitting in front, and me sitting in the back with a notebook making notes. And I was told by the production managers that up until that film, Mani sir was not very keen on letting his AD sit on the edit. He used to not let. So I was like very honored that I was given a chance to sit on the edit. So I saw these two guys, like these two legends, sit and work together, sit and edit Guru together. So I was very in awe of Nani sir. And when my second short film Rahu was done, which was a very edit heavy film. Rahu is a very treatment heavy film, it's an edit heavy film. In fact, I used to narrate people that Rahu is this. This is what Rahu is. Anybody was like, what is Rahu about? I said this. Basically, because it had 5 stories, 3 going backwards, 2 going forward. So it was this. And they meet at one point and they keep going the same way. So this was Rahu for me. So I used to, and it was written with that template in mind, that the 5 stories have to intersect at one point and they keep continuing the trajectory like that. So I was very keen to show the way we edited. I wanted to show it to Nani sir to get his opinion. And he was so enthused about Rahu. He went and showed it to so many people. He thought it was very well edited and he really liked it. And he gave me some feedback on it, but he thoroughly enjoyed the film. And that kind of put me at ease with him. That started my dialogue with him. And up until then, I used to not really talk to him. I used to keep my distance with him. And that gave me the... I managed to ask him for Shaitan. And that to Shaitan, I think he came last minute. I was able to convince him to get on board on Shaitan. And I think the biggest thing that I've learned from Mani sir. Mani sir has edited Shaitan, David, Wazir, Solo. So many films of mine that I've worked with him. So, but the biggest thing I've learned from Mani sir is, which up until then, even until Rahu had not really taken that seriously, is how to involve your editor as part of your scripting process also. It's not necessary that you shoot your film and you take the rushes to the editor and then start it. Your editor can be a huge value add, even if you're scripting, while you're scripting, when the script is locked, during prep. He used to involve himself. Shaitan, I didn't have the luxury to do that. Shaitan, but I had a different kind of adjustment of Shaitan, because Shaitan was shot in 3-4 different schedules. So after every schedule, I had to run to Chennai and sit with him. And that time that I spent with him was so useful, so valuable for me, and it was my first feature. So he was able to guide me correctly on what I should be looking out for in the next schedule, what I should be focusing hard on the next schedule. So as a mentor, he was able to really push me in the right direction, and he spoiled me because of that in Shaitan. And what I did in David, I deliberately divided my schedule in such a way that I was able to, after every schedule, go back and sit with him, sit and watch the rushes with him, edit with him, and understand what I need to do to make this better. And so that way, involving an editor at an early stage is something I learned from him. And the way he involves himself, again, like I said, he just spoils you because he just takes it on himself. And it's almost like, when he talks, which I mentioned earlier, when creators or other collaborators start talking about your subject as if it's their own, it's magical to watch that. It's magical to see them talk about it with so much sincerity and honesty, and then give life to something which you wouldn't even have thought of. So that's something I've really learned a lot from Nani sir. And I continue to look up to him. I continue to keep sharing my material with him. Even if he's not editing my film, I keep sending him stuff to get his feedback. And he's someone I really, really look up to. And one more thing he used to really do, which I don't think a lot of editors do, but uh, which I thought was the normal thing. Like I thought if Nani sir does it, doesn't mean every editor does it. And I realized later, not every editor does that. He actually doubles up like a first AD after your shoot is complete. Nani sir, after the shoot is complete, after the edit is complete, he actually sets a timetable. He decides a timetable on once the reel is locked, how it should go to different departments, what, which time, which reel should go to one department, and he backtracks it. Like he'll have a mental date of the release in his head, and he'll backtrack it, and he'll set a schedule. He doesn't need to do that. He can have an assistant do it. He can tell an AD do it, but he himself does it. And and I thought every editor must be doing it. Then I realized with other editors, nobody does that. He does that because I think that's his practice. He likes to decide like, okay, this kind of, so that there's a clear discipline on when what needs to be done and how when what needs to go, and everybody needs to follow that roster government. So that's something again I learned from him. Which then I started imposing on to my other editors ki tum log bhi sale karo aisa. So that's something I learned from him. And if you really want to see, again, Nani sir has edited some legendary films, but one favorite sequence of mine that I want to pick on is the opening sequence of Ravan, which was partly on paper. I remember reading it on paper, the way Mani sir had written it and everything. But just the way he kind of edited it, if you watch from the moment you see that back shot of Abhishek standing on top of the cliff till he kind of pushes that small pebble down to the water, then it cuts to 4 different stories of 4 different attacks that are being planned, and one by one the attack starts to happen as Abhishek dives into the water. He starts swimming, and the sound starts kicking in, the music starts kicking in as the attacks happen, and it reaches a crescendo. And by the time you see Abhishek on top of a hilltop playing the drum, and you see like a magic of edit, cinematography, sound, everything kind of coming together so beautifully. In theater, it was, for me, it was like a phenomenal. I would go watch Ravan in the theater even now, if given a chance, just to experience that, because it was magical to see all of it just coming together so beautifully. And I think that's the phenomenal thing of how Nani sir edited it. So after, I guess now I'll just talk about some of the other editing examples apart from mine. Ravan was, though I think Ravan is my film also because of me working on it. But other than that, I guess another example I want to talk about is Dalapati. Okay, again, I'm picking on Mani sir's films only. Dalapati had a sequence with Suresh, edited by Suresh Ars. And I remember I was very young when I watched it, but that sequence stayed with me. It is a sequence where Mammootty goes to this one warehouse for a meeting early in the morning with this one henchman. And he gets betrayed by his own henchman, who runs off and shuts the garage. And he suddenly realizes there are some 6-7 attackers inside the garage. And it's a double cross. He's being attacked. He's going to be attacked. And the sequence starts, and you see the shock on Mammootty's face, and you see this one guy charging at him with a knife, and you see the attack happen, but it cuts right before you see the stab happening. You just cut to Mammootty just gasping for a breath of air, and then suddenly it cuts to Mammootty's wife in the temple. And from this point on, you keep intercutting the action of the attack that is happening with Mammootty's wife in the temple, who's just going about, she's praying to different deities, and you see Rajnikant also waiting there. So it's a very quiet scene. So the sound keeps shifting. So there is a heavy score happening, a dramatic score happening along with the action that is happening in Mammootty's scene, while there is the temple sounds happening there, and it keeps intercutting between the two. Which on itself it's amazing to watch, because it's you're watching this juxtaposition of two things happening. But what really struck me there was, I'm a big action buff. So as a kid, when I was watching it, it really bothered me that they didn't show the action. You see the action happening, but just before any stab used to happen, any hit used to happen, it used to cut. It used to cut and go to the temple. And when you come back, there's a time jump. There's something has already happened already. And by then the thing is you have been so preset to watching action being covered a certain way, and you're watching action in a linear format that you are used to watching. So when something out of the ordinary like this happens, it bothers you. It kind of suddenly shakes you up, and you realize what is happening. Why is it bother? Why is it jarring? Why is it that it's disturbing me? And it took me a long time to understand that that was the style. That was the very conscious decision to cut like that. To not, and I asked many years later. I asked Mani sir about it. He said that he had covered the fight fully. He had done the fight like how it should be shot, how it has to be covered. But the choice to cut it like that was a very stylistic call taken by both Mani sir and Sureshos. And I think it's a very, I had never seen anything like that, wherein you see you see Mammootty being attacked just before the stab happens, you cut. Just before Mammootty is about to hit someone, you cut. So every time that happens, it kind of takes you to the end, and then you just let go. So for me, it's one very fine example of a phenomenal edit piece. Then I guess I'll just go for a favorite sequence, which I think most filmmakers, aspiring filmmakers, always look at it as one of the best edited sequences of all time. I guess is the Benjamin Button accident scene, which I guess everybody knows about, and it's a masterclass. Again, it's a short film by itself, or actually, it's actually a feature film by itself. The 3-minute sequence is almost like a feature film, and if anybody wants to understand how an idea can be conveyed, how an entire feature film idea can be conveyed in 3 minutes, I think that's a sequence to watch to see how beautifully it's been shot and cut. The precision with which it's been cut and put together it's just phenomenal. So that's again one example I guess I wanted to give about how an edit can really enhance your viewing experience. Then there are some other favorites, which I think I can keep talking about editing and cinematography for a long time. But Anil Kapoor's entry, I have to mention, because this is like a guilty pleasure of mine. Anil Kapoor's entry in Trimurti is just, it's something else. For me, it's just, I can't stop gushing about it. Even now, I can't. In fact, I told, when I met Anil Kapoor, and I told him that entry sequence of yours in Trimurti is just unbelievable. He said, "Jhakas hai na?" I said, "Jhakas nahi, double jhakas hai." So, and he said, "It's all Mukul. It's all Mukul." And Mukul Anand, who was this phenomenal ad filmmaker and who started doing films, you can see that stylistic flair in his films. And if you want to see style kind of marrying content, that sequence is just a clear example. It comes at the end of the song Bol Bole Bol, with Shah Rukh and Mohan Agashe singing. And the end of the sequence, the music starts going up, it's crescendos, and you see Anil Kapoor making that entry into that cut to match the sound so beautifully. And it ends on that high, and the interval card comes. Again, a beautiful example of everything just coming together so beautifully, and experience of watching that in the theater, first day, first show, black mein ticket khareed ke, with the audience who by that time is so irritated that Anil Kapoor still not made an entry, and then suddenly Anil Kapoor makes that entry. It was like a full paisa vasool moment for me. And another example, I recently rewatched Vinod Sir's 1942 Love Story. Again, the interval block of 1942 Love Story, which is Jackie Shroff's entry, Shubhankar's entry. So I have an AD called Shubhankar, by the way, who was named Shubhankar because his father, Mr. Ashwini Chaudhary, named him Shubhankar after Jackie Shroff's character. He was so enamored by Shubhankar from 1942, he named his son Shubhankar, who happens to be my AD. So
that's insane.
That's a shout out to Shubhankar, if he's watching. So Shubhankar's entry, Jackie Shroff's entry in 1940 Love Story, which intercuts with Anupam Kher killing himself by lighting this dynamite. You have to see Renu Saluja's edit and the way she's intercut both these sequences, and how it again, the marriage of that sound and that how everything just goes quiet. There's so much chaos happening before that, and it suddenly just goes quiet, and you have just had a sound of the match. And there are 3 shots of the matches taken from 3 different, the coverage of 3 shots of the matches, and how those 3 shots marry together, and you see the flame kicking in, and Anupam Kher turns and says Jai Hind, and there's an explosion that happens. So it's like the calm before the storm, and there's this massive explosion, and along with the explosion, you see Jackie Shroff's entry. Again, phenomenal for someone who's wanting to watch a great edited sequence. That's another example.
You know, Bejoy, I want to ask you 2 questions which people who are watching on Facebook have asked before you go on to music and sound design. Indu Sinha wants to know that once you found your tribe of collaborators, once you do this, once you kind of identify that these are the people that I want to work with and I want to continue to work with them, is there ever a worry that you will hit a comfort zone with them that will become way too comfortable and the whole creative process might stagnate?
It's a very pertinent question. I'll go back to the point when I say that the spine of the story is crystal in my head, and I don't let personally for me, I can't talk for other filmmakers, but I don't let that get contaminated or get diluted in any way. That is something that I make sure that you have to stay true to that vision of however comfortable you are with a collaborator, but it can't veer too much away from what you're trying to say, because then you lose objectivity. And it has happened. That happened with in the past also, wherein sometimes I just didn't have enough control over certain things, where I was very sure that this is not what I want to do, but with certain collaborators I had to give in, and as soon as I gave in, I realized that it was no longer what I wanted to do. So then that is a decision I had to live with for the rest of my life. Whenever I watched that sequence, when I watched that thing, I knew I would have done it differently, and it would have maybe worked differently. Maybe it wouldn't have worked, but at least I could stand by it and say, okay, this was the decision I took. In fact, I want to give a bad example of myself. For Wazir, I remember the song In the End, which is Atrangi Yari. That was not the idea I had. I had a very different kind of an idea for a song which was going to be done. And I'd even started working towards that song. And then Vinod sir came up with this idea of going with a completely different tonality, because he said that even though Mr. Bachchan is dead, let's make a song about friendship and everything. And he went another direction. He got this song he made. And now when I look back at it, I think it was such a smart decision to do that. That worked in the favor of the film, and my decision was not the right one. So, so that does happen. It can happen both ways. So, going back to what you had said earlier, it's a very thin line. But the clarity with what you want from your vision is something that you have to stay sacred to, and you might make mistakes in that. It might go wrong. Maybe your decision to do something might be wrong, but at least you can own it and you can say that, okay, fine. I'll quickly go into music and sound design. And before I come to mine, I think I'll just talk about a couple of the examples I wanted to give. First, I'll talk about, because I just spoke about Vinod sir, let me just talk about Vinod sir again. The film he made, Eklavya, had this unreal sequence in it, which when I watched in the big screen, I couldn't believe he pulled it off. I couldn't believe the audacity of that sequence. It is a sequence, if people who have not seen Eklavya, it's a sequence where Mr. Bachchan goes to kill Jimmy Shergill in a small private auditorium, and he switches off the power in the auditorium, and it's complete darkness. And he tells, and you hear Mr. Bachchan's booming voice and saying that if you breathe, I'm going to kill you. So you better not breathe. So in complete darkness, the screen holds, and you first see Jimmy Shergill, he has got a gun, and you see just flashes of the gun firing, and then there are no more bullets left. And then Mr. Bachchan says, now I know that you don't have bullets left, and now I can see you breathe. So if you breathe even one more time, I'm going to kill you. So you see Jimmy Shergill suddenly just take a deep breath and wait. And as an audience, when you're watching it, you take a deep breath and you're also waiting, and the entire audience were like quiet, and the screen is black. There's no sound, and it's just dead silence. And you're waiting for the moment when Jimmy Shergill is going to breathe, because you know he's going to breathe. And it happens. It's a foregone conclusion, but still you're waiting in anticipation, and it happens. And the next thing is the sound of this, like a very sharp sound of a knife just slashing through Jimmy Shergill's neck, and the light comes on, and you see the knife has already gone through his neck. It's a masterclass in how to design sound, how to design sound, how to use sound to tell a story. There's no visual, nothing, but how just the actor's baritone, the sound of that particular room, the ambience, everything, how that vacuum can be created, and yet you can make a thrilling experience out of it. I think it was a great idea on paper, but executed even better with the help of all these tools. to boost. So I think in sound design, that's one example I would want to give. For people who have not seen it, just watch the sequence. And just two other examples I wanted to give was one, both of them actually are R.D. Burman. One is because recently I was talking about Satya Satta to someone, and we were talking about Amitabh's doppelganger Babu's entry had this very typical background score, uh, which was very unique.
Yeah.
And there is a YouTube video on how R.D. Burman composed that. And it's unreal to think that he actually thought of creating a sound from a gargle. He created a sound like a melodic sound from a woman gargling. And he created a very haunting theme out of that and used that as the theme for Babu. I suggest watch that sequence in mute and then watch it with the music. You'll see how the music elevates that sequence. How that the you kind of get the sense of impending doom, even though you've seen Amitabh before as another character, but suddenly you see Amitabh in a different light with this different cat eyes and this music uh, uh, kind of almost cueing you, telling you that this man means danger. So it's again a very very beautiful use of how music can be used to so effectively to create an ambience, create the atmosphere. And a similar example I want to talk about is Shakti. Again, R.D. Burman score. Shakti, I don't know, many people know. Shakti was actually a script by Salim Javed, but it was inspired by a Marathi play, Rayagada Deva Jage Tha, which was a story about Shivaji and Sambhaji and the father-son conflict, which was then adapted into Hindi. And the conflict happens because when the son is really small, when Bachchan sir is small, he's kidnapped by Amrish Puri, and Dilip Kumar on the phone when he's demanded a ransom, or he says that it's okay, you kill my son, I will not compromise on my duty. And the little boy hears that, and that scars him for the rest of his life. He thinks his father hates him, and that's the bone of the film. That's that he carries that emotion the rest of his life, and for the rest of the story, that's the hate he carries towards his father. That why doesn't his father like him? How could his father say that it's okay, kill my son? And R.D. Burman created a small theme for that, and that theme plays out with the kid in the beginning, and the music kind of transitions to when Bachchan becomes big, and that theme, every time that theme plays out, whenever there's a conflict between the father and son, and you keep hearing the theme throughout the film, and it plays out in different formats, but it's like almost like a very simple 3-note theme, and but you just see such a simple small melody can create such a huge impact, an emotional impact in the scenes that unfold, and especially as it progresses and the conflict gets more and more, but the music stays the same, but the impact just aggravates every time. So again, a very beautiful use of how music can just enhance. I know music, you can give 50,000 examples of songs and score and everything, but this is one of the things that always stayed with me, and I try and use that as an example even when I'm working on my stories. How to use something as simple as that, which can enhance my storytelling, because music plays a very important role in my storytelling. In fact, I write my music in my script. I keep writing cues for music. So this is something I practice, and using that, I want to talk about my experience in Shaitan only. I remember Shaitan being my first feature. It's also my music composer Prashant Pillai's first feature, and we'd already made some 5-6 scratches for the film. And somewhere down the line, I think earlier I mentioned about how Mukul guided me and told me to scrap the short film and take on the job. Very similarly, Prashant one day came and told me that Shaitan, the kind of script it is, maybe we should work with different musicians and create a different kind of a soundscape. And I was kind of taken aback that because Prashant himself is trying to get a break with me with this film. He could have been just an individual composer on this film, but he said that this film needs a bigger canvas in terms of the sound. So let's try and collaborate with different musicians. So he pushed me towards Mikey McClary. He pushed me towards Asian Dub Foundation we were trying to work with at that time. He pushed me in different directions with Ranjit Barot, with Bhanak Matsu. modern mafia. So this is something that Prashant, and that's a bug that Prashant kind of put in me, and that continues to grow with every film. After that, I've only worked with many multiple musicians, independent musicians, music composers, and that kind of someone looking at a bigger picture and seeing what will enhance the movie more is something I learned from Prashant, and that helped my movie so much more. And that's how I got a multiple musical score for Shaitan. I got different composers to compose and work on it, and including Prashant. Prashant did multiple songs for it, but I had Bhayanak Maut, I had Ranjit Barot, I had Mikey McLary, all collaborated on Shaitan. And coming to Mikey's contribution, of course, how Khoya Khoya Chand was not Khoya Khoya Chand on paper. On paper, on the script, it was written with a very clear thing that the shootout is about to start with this kid who plays with the radio, and he switches the radio station, and a commercial plays. So the entire shootout was supposed to play out on the commercial. That was the idea. That was what was written. And the commercial I had in mind was Vico Vajradanti. And I wanted the entire shootout to happen on Vajradanti, Vico Vajradanti. That's what the idea was. And I had written with that. And for months we tried, but to no avail. We tried so much. My EP, Vandana Bhatti, I remember, she wrote so many emails. I wrote so many emails. We tried to get meetings. We tried to get some middlemen to get us a meeting with the main guy, but they just refused. So we shot the sequence, but we just couldn't get the Vico theme. Then started the idea of, okay, now let's look at alternative. And then we started looking at options, and we started placing different old songs on it. And we placed a song. It was not working. And I was in Mikey's studio, and Mikey had composed something, and he placed an old version of the song, and it didn't work. And then Mikey suddenly placed Khoya Khoya Chand on it, on the timeline, on the edit. And suddenly it just fit like a glove. I remember me and him watching it, and we both jumped out of the seat, and we said that, don't touch it. This is what it is. We should just go with this. And I can't tell you, I remember going back to Nani sir and saying that, because Nani sir wanted to trim the action sequence. He wanted to cut it down further. But because Mikey had just put it on the timeline, and it fit in so well, the beats were just falling so correctly. I said, don't touch the timeline. Nani said, it's okay. We'll trim the film somewhere else, but don't touch the action sequence. Let it be like that. So we didn't touch the action sequence. The way Mikey plays the music on the timeline is the way it played out in the film. So it just worked like a glove on that. Though we had a lot of issues even during release, because Khoya Khoya Chand was not being given to us from Saregama. They refused to give us, which is why it never features in the album. They refused to give us the rights. So then I had this rockstar producer, Anurag, who happened to be acting in a Saregama film at that point. So when we wrote to Saregama said that they will charge us 45 lakhs or something for the song, for the user song. And we were like, what? I can make another film in that. So we were like, no way we're going to pay 45 lakhs for that. So we kept requesting, saying, we said that हमारे पास 1 लाख रुपया है, चलेगा क्या? दो तक दे देंगे, चलो please दे दो हमको 2 में. So we were like trying to haggle like that. And that's when Anurag said, hold on. It's, hold my glass kind of thing. So Anurag sends a mail to them saying that he had some 6 days left of shoot on the film that was being produced by Saregama, called Soundtrack, I think. Anurag said, I have revised my fee. You have to pay me 2 crores for the 6 days that I work. So only if you pay me will I come on to set. Otherwise, I will not come on to set. So then, as a reply to that, they said, when do you want to finalize the paperwork for Khoya Khoya Chand? That's how Anurag, thank you very much, but that's how Anurag kind of muscled his way and got me the song. I couldn't feature it on the album, but I could feature it in the film. And that's how Khoya Khoya Chand happened. So anyway, I guess collaborators, see, all those people got in together and helped me make it happen.
Bejoy, before I open the house out for questions, and there are many on Facebook that have also come, but I think what also worked in terms of the session was that filmmaking is a collaborative process, and of course with Bejoy he's internalized it, and he works towards that. But what is also happening in the industry is the acknowledgement of different departments, the generosity and the credit that everybody needs to be given in terms of being part of a particular creation and what they contribute. I think 10 years ago, the acknowledgement was only for the director and the producer, and writers would not even be credited properly. I mean, forget about being paid a remuneration that they deserve. So I think
I used to get so bothered about the whole writer, why writers would not be given credit.
exactly.
If you see Shaitan, that was something I forced on. I said the first credit I gave was to the writers, to Mega, as soon as the film gets over. I said that because, and at that time they used to not do that. They used to not give writers credit on the poster. In fact, even now I see some posters put out where they don't give credit to writers, and I don't understand that.
And therefore, the changing the grace that is coming within the industry in terms of recognizing the different departments that work towards the vision of the film. It's very important as creators for, I think, everyone to acknowledge that even though the primary vision is the vision of the director, the process is so collaborative that everybody, you never know. Like, for example, I didn't know that it was actually not Bejoy, but somebody else who brought in Khoya Khoya Chand. So if Bejoy was not a generous enough creator, you would not know that. You would not know that this is how this happens. And this is a very important thing to kind of acknowledge, not only acknowledge, but to recognize that how do you motivate other people to make your vision theirs. And I'm going to open the house out for questions with Ashish Tatla.
Hi, Bejoy.
I
Yeah, hello, sir. Sir, my question is like, I'm a writer. I'm based in Delhi and Bangalore, but none of my work is still registered in Screenwriter Association or copyright. So, for one of which I should go for registering my work, then I can apply to the production houses for my stories or scripts which I am having in hand.
No, your question is that you're not able to register at Screenwriters Association.
I have not registered. Should I register first? Then I approach the production houses. This is my question.
Please register your ideas first. Even if it's a one-page idea, always register it. Before you start sharing your material. Make sure you register the idea. Put the registration number before you share it with anyone.
Hello, Bejoy, sir. I had a very brief moment with you at MAMI 2019 when Siblings was being played for the first time. It was a great conversation with you. So my question is, when Solo was being made, how did you get Dulquer Salman to be on the same page when he was playing different personas with different tonalities? Because Dulquer is a star. So at times it happens that a star plays a star, even though the character is written differently. So how did you get him to play different characters for Solo?
Luckily, I shot every story with a lot of gaps. So we had just attacked one story at a time. So we had enough time to prep for each story, prep for each character. So we knew like what Trilok is all about, what Shiva is all about, what Rudra is all about. So what Shekhar is all about. In fact, Shekhar was the one he struggled with a bit because of the stammer and everything. He wanted to get that right. So thankfully, like I said, because we shot it one segment at a time, we had enough time to prep for it. I didn't care too much about, I know he's a star and everything, but I was looking at him purely as an actor and purely as the characters that I had written for Solo. So, and he's so open in receiving suggestions and then adapting to it. And he's so quick and effortless at it that it surprises you, shocks you sometimes. That I remember one very complicated scene that we were trying to do, and we were short of time. He had to rush somewhere, and in the middle of the scene, I went and briefed him something completely different because I wanted to try another take. And he did it so effortlessly, and I didn't even realize that I actually threw him off. Emotionally, I had thrown him off because I had asked him for a different kind of a take. But he did it without even thinking. He was able to just adapt to it and do it so effortlessly. And that's a sign of a good actor, I feel. And because with some other actor, I would have had to stop the shoot, discuss it in more detail, go back and forth on it, and then attempt it. But with him, I had to just, with the snap of a finger, he was able to switch and do that for me. And that way, he just really spoiled me as a director. So he's someone I really, really enjoyed working with. And I guess I hope I would love to work with him sometime soon.
This is great. great lecture listening to you. So my question is, I'm an aspiring actor, so especially for actors and filmmakers, is it better to learn through a film school, or is it better if you intern under or work on the sets and work under great filmmakers?
If you have the luxury of time, do both. If you can, try and do both. Any day for sure, you should definitely, if you have the luxury to and access to a film school, please go to a film school. Of course, learn the tricks of trade from there. But then, of course, after that, if you have access to filmmakers that you can work with them, understand how a film is made. For sure, it will only help and enrich your experience.
So at what time do you actually involve the editor of the film? Is it during the pre-production, or is it after? Is it at the post-production?
No, I start involving them from the story level. Even before the script, actually, I start involving, at least with Srikar sir, and now with the other editors I work with Farooq and Priyank and Ashish and all that. So with them, I started involving them at the story level. I start bouncing off my stories with them, start getting feedback on story level. Then as it progresses, I keep them updated and keep sharing. So I try and involve them earlier on. In fact, with my new film, I've really pushed it even more. And earlier I used to just involve a core team, but now I've started involving more technicians much earlier on, so that it kind of it's there in their system also. They also going on thinking about the film for a much longer time. So with Tesh, I did that.
Hi, sir.
Hi.
Hi. My question to you was majorly, what were the challenges you faced while shooting a multilingual film like David, which also had, different little bit changes of storyline when it was shot in Hindi and then in the regional language. So what were your key challenges on that?
I think it's a very cumbersome process. It's David was not done out of choice. At that time, it was a kind of a business decision to do it like that. But then I went with it and I tried my best with that. But it is definitely a very tedious job to kind of, because you're trying to cater to two different markets, two different sensibilities. So you have to kind of adhere to that and trying to tweak your script to match both sensibilities. So you can fail both ways. And that's what happened with David. I think it did not work for multiple reasons. I think one of the reasons is that it alienated some people in the a majority of the audience in Tamil also. But I did it again. After David, I decided I'll never do a bilingual again. And then I did it again with Solo. And after Solo, I decided I'll never do it again, but I might do it again. But Solo, I at least the learning from David helped me. I tried to, I enforced a lot more caution while approaching each language. So I had a separate team altogether for both the languages to make sure that each language is given its proper justification, and the setting, the authenticity was all right. So I tried. And I think Solo that way individually works. As a Tamil film, it works. As a Malayalam film, it works. But yeah, it is very, very difficult, very, very tough to do a bilingual.
Thank you, sir.
First of all, thanks a lot to MAMI and especially Smriti and the whole team for arranging this whole, online. It's sort of as good as a masterclass talking with all these different directors. So thank you so much for that. Secondly, coming to Bejoy sir, first of all, again, let me thank you for making Shaitan. I remember watching that film all those years ago in the theater. I was like blown away by it, especially with the action sequences you just spoke about, the whole slow motion, the songs and everything. So just thank you for inspiring, filmmakers like us by making films like that. So coming to the question, how different is it from making a proper feature-length film to a web series like Flip? And how do you approach it? Is the process more or less the same, or is it different? Because with a film, you have these studios, but you are more or less given some kind of creative liberty. But when it comes to particular web series, I've heard that there are a lot of studio executives and there are just a lot of things that fall upon you as a creator. So do you give into it, or do you still find a creative voice that you still find somewhere that this particular thing needs to be told and this is the way I'm going to do it, or I'm not going to do it? So how is that approach that you take?
So Prem, to answer a question, thing is, I have not really experienced that yet because all these platforms have, other than Eros, who gave me a chance way back with Flip. We had started Flip almost 2016 or something. But other than that, all these other platforms, I have not really had a chance to work with them. So I'm yet to experience what you said in terms of that kind of a control. So once I am part of that kind of a system, I've just recently started working on something where again I'm just directing to. I'm not the showrunner. I'm just directing 2 episodes for something. But that is something I've just started. So I'm kind of just navigating that and maneuvering through that. So it is definitely, like you said, it's a very new experience for me also. And I guess it's the same with a lot of other filmmakers who are used to doing films a certain way, and suddenly they have to kind of adjust to this new system of longer format and more people having control and many more variables to kind of maneuver. So it's a new thing. I guess we'll all have to kind of find our way into it. So I'm also waiting to see, or rather waiting to work with all these people to kind of figure that out. But it is definitely a different experience for sure.
Okay, so first of all, thanks a lot for getting me on this session. It's been a huge pleasure. And I recently saw Shaitan actually, just because in anticipation for this session. And my question was essentially to Bejoy sir, that, you see a lot of these actor-director duos or even music composer and director duos, like say Hans Zimmer and Christopher Nolan, or Robert De Niro and Martin Scorsese. And even in Bollywood, like say Zoya Akhtar and Kalki Keklan, who participates in basically all her films, and even Mani Ratnam sir and A.R. Rahman, who do collaborations together. So do you think these duos actually share some artistic connection, like in every project that they do? Or do you think it's like a marketing gimmick after, say, 2 or 3 films? So like you marketed saying these 2 are collaborating, so it's going to be a great film.
I think it's a very individualistic thing. We spoke about certain filmmakers. It's also the comfort they have with each other, and they like both know what each can deliver, kind of thing. So there is that comfort, and I think that comfort translates into some constructive work also. So Mani sir and Raman sir is like, they're like a match made in heaven. So you can expect some magic out of them, and I don't think either of them works because they think that इससे हमारा market बड़ा होगा. They work together because they know that there is a mutual respect. There is a mutual respect for each other's work, and there is a passion to create something new and push the boundaries with every project that they do. And
yeah,
I guess that's the same with others also. I think the market aspect or the trade aspect of it must come into play with some people, some duos, I guess, but not with everyone. I think with most of them, it is a comfort, and it is that expectation that they have with each other, and which they kind of justified in the projects they've done together, and they want to explore newer terrains together. So
yeah, do you think personally, do you have like any duos that, I mean, your wife has worked with you on like 2 or 3 films, so do you find that comfort?
So with my wife, she worked with me in Shaitan as an AD and as an actor. That time, she was my girlfriend. She was an AD and an actor. At the same time, she worked in David, and she handled production and also acted in David. But I think after David, we had fought so much on set that we decided कि यार अभी हम लोग या तो picture बनाएंगे या तो साथ में रहेंगे. So we decided we'll not work together. So then we took a long gap of not working together. And so Wazir and all, she didn't work with me. Solo, she didn't work with me. Though Solo, she was part of the production and supervising, but she was not actively involved in the whole aspect of the filmmaking. But yeah, Siblings was the first time we came together as a husband and wife. We came together and we worked together on Siblings because it was a first venture as a filmmaker, and I really wanted to try and help as much as possible. But I must say that Siblings, the story initially was very different. I had written it was my story. I had written a very different story, and it was supposed to be part of Flip, and we had written a draft for it. It was called Mind Reader, and it was a very dark story, and it was an idea that I suggested, and she liked the idea of these 2 sisters, and she wanted to take it on, and she completely changed the story, and I was so upset. I was so upset that she changed the story. And after changing, she used to keep bouncing it off me, and I used to keep getting irritated that मेरा story का तो एकदम खत्म कर दिया था. And she was like, but तुमने दिया तो now let me do it the way I want to do it. And that's when I realized that she had seen the story a certain way and she was making a different world out of it. And I realized that if as a filmmaker this is the world she chooses to see, then I need to let go of that. So after a point I told her, you know what, you write the whole draft, you let me know when you want me to step in and help out in whatever capacity. Let me step away, because otherwise I'll keep wanting to drag you towards the story that I want to. So I had to let go of something, and then she took it and she ran with it. She wrote the entire screenplay along with another writer, Arpita. And then my role was just as a producer and a spot boy, and just coming to set and making sure सब लोगों ने खाना खाया, backup time पे हो जाए, बस ये किया मैंने. Rest, it was her baby, and I think when I, in hindsight, when I see the shot, I realized that she internalized the story so much, and she gave it such a unique voice to it, that it was all for the better. And it was a right decision for me to let go, and was the right decision for her to take it and own it.
Yeah, hi. So I wanted to ask you that we know some great filmmakers, as Terrell said, that who have kind of a relationship with the other people that they work. It's like a duo that they already have, and sometimes you find people with the same wavelength that you agree with and you like working with them. So do you think you need to be stuck on that team, that the perfect note that you hit with people, or you should try experimenting with new people, you should try working out with other people as well, so that you kind of open a perspective, or you should stick with what is working for you?
So I can only answer from my experience, and what has really worked for me is I do a mix of both. So with every film, I actually try and work with new people, be it technicians, be it actors. I keep pushing and trying to work with new people and find new dimensions in the story, find new ways of telling the story. Because I feel personally, this is personally what I feel, that infusing that kind of new blood, it kind of changes my way of looking at things also, for the better. So, but there are some people with whom I have a certain comfort, where I'm looking for something specific I know which they can do, and those people I kind of keep going back with, which happens a lot with, I think, musicians that I work with. Some musicians that I keep going back to working with those musicians, be it Prashant, be it Gaurav, Prashant, Gaurav, I keep going back to. So those are my comfort space. I keep going back to working with them. But with almost every other department, I've always tried to push and work with newer people. In fact, I have my production house Getaway, and I used to have a team. I used to have a very strong core team handling production. But even that, over the years, I've started changing the team, because I realized they've been working with me, and they can now take on and do, like, they can have their own independent production house and do other work. And so they have branched out, and I've tried to help out in that. And I try to get new people to work with me in production, so that even earlier I thought, oh, production mein to, we can keep working with new people everywhere else, but production same hona chahiye. But that also I've started changing now. I started changing that thing of trying to work with new people with every project. So I personally believe that I that works for me, working with new people. And you make mistakes. Sometimes they might not be the right fit for you, but you learn. So, it really helps me working with new people. Tesh, I think, is the first time where I've worked with almost everyone is new. New, when I say new, the DOP had not done a feature film before this. The production designer had not done a feature film before this. The editor had not done a feature film before this. So it was a completely new team. They're all done work. They've done other work, but not really done a feature before. So for them, it's a new experience. And for me also, it was a very new experience, because I like the way they looked at that material, and the way they were adapting to it and contributing towards it. So it was a very new experience for me, as it was for them. So just.
Hi, Bejoy. Okay, I have two-part question. One is I've enjoyed all your work, be it in web series like Flip, and be it your films and everything. One thing, this as an audience, when I watch it, not as a producer and being part of the industry, but I watch it as a completely audience, and I see it that your characters are very layered. Okay, now this is my assumption, that when you must be writing your characters, you must be having like a Bible on their character sketches. Okay, so if you do you find it limitation, because film is a restrictive medium, when I say in terms of time slot, because it's like 2 hours or whatever your time medium is. But in a web series, you can take your character and have all your shades take through. So is that a restrictive, and how do you choose, especially in a film, how do you choose your, that these are the inherent quotients I'm going to, put it on the screen in terms of either the screenplay or the scene or the dialogues, or like how you said, the nuances? Because what you spoke about in Wazir, okay, and I remember watching it in the theater, and I clapped when Mr. Bachchan, that mark came, okay, and everybody looked at me, and in the interval I explained to people, I said, this is what I saw, and I thought I was talking left and everybody was talking right, but I got it. So for me, I felt that you do a lot of intuitions like that. So does it like really help? Like, how do you go about it?
Primarily, all of this what you said, it helps if, I mean, personally for me, what works is uh, having a very, very open communication line with your actors. I mean, you can have everything charted out on your script. You can have a whole Bible on your character, but to effectively communicate that with the actor so that the actor internalizes it and make sure that, because if the actor understands the graph of what you're trying to do, then they can bring out the finer details that is needed for maybe every scene. They can bring out this small nuances which maybe I wouldn't even think of, but they can do that if they have really taken on the character sketch and taken and internalized it as much as possible. So for that, a lot of communication is necessary, and I try and do that as much as possible way before shoot. I really engage with my actors as much as possible, and not just with my principal cast. I try and do it with my secondary cast also. So in fact, what throws me off are the people who come on set on the like I had to work with some actors who land up on set directly, and suddenly I have to do a scene with them, and they have no clue what I'm trying to say, and I have no clue what their baggage is like. So those actors throw me off, and it takes time, and then those scenes take time to shoot and everything. But with my principal actors, I've always had the luxury of prepping enough with them before I go on to set. And in fact, with Tesh, even with Wazir, we had a lot of reading. We did a lot of reading sessions. Like the entire team did a lot of reading sessions way before we went on to set, so that everything was thrashed out. Every moment was thrashed out clearly. And with Tesh, again, with Tesh, I tried to do something different. We engaged again the same thing. I had a personal dialogue, one-on-one dialogue with each of the actors. I had personal sessions with each of the actors a couple of times, and then we had a joint session with all the actors, wherein we just read out the scenes, we discussed the scene in detail, we discussed what was working, what was not working. We started putting down notes for the scenes. We started making corrections on the dialogues. I made it a much more like an open platform, which I had not done earlier. Earlier, I used to do workshop with actors, but I used to not get them to be so collaborative or make it so immersive, wherein they were allowed to make changes to the scene. I used to not allow that earlier, at least. But for Tesh, I kind of pushed it because I saw some actors were giving me something way more than what was there on paper, and it really, I guess, in time it will be seen whether it was a good call or a bad call. But personally, for me, it was an enriching experience. I enjoyed that experience of giving that push to those actors and letting them give me something more than what was already there, and then taking from that and then using that, which I used to do earlier also, but I just took it a few more notches higher in this last film. So I enjoy that process. What you just talked about, I actually like that process, but it all happens way before we go to set. It happens during the prep time.
Hi Bejoy, and Bejoy, thank you for the leads that you had, shared with your filmography that you have so far. Bejoy, I know you by a song, and I'll simply put it, it's Khoya Khoya Chand. Nothing beats that for me, and whenever I watch that, it's just your craft that comes in that song itself. Having said that, the three films that I've watched of yours, like I'm still to watch Solo, which I was planning for a long time, David, Wazir, and Shaitan. All three of them seem like you were making a trilogy at some point in them. You had something in your head, and they felt somehow connected with each other because all of them had one thing in common, which was grit. There were darker undertones to it, and one thing that wrapped it very well was the sound design that you made for all three of the films. And categorically, I love the sound in all these three films and the music. and we actually extensively talked about the music as well. So I really want to know whether you were thinking about it when you were writing or directing these three films.
I personally feel that this is very personal opinion. Please feel free to trash it. In fact, that's something I want to talk about. That all that I said in the session, a lot of it comes from my personal experience, and it's not like I say that this is the way to go. This is what I'm trying to say, that this is what has worked for me.
Right.
To make it was what has worked for me. Now, what I'll just answer to your query, what you just talked about sound. I feel sound is one area that we heavily neglect here in our industry. And I'm not just talking about here in Hindi, down south. Sound is one area that we always neglect. It's always kept towards the end and always treated keep last minute mein ho jayega. And I personally feel that it is as integral as any other aspect of filmmaking, be it cinematography, be it editing. Sound needs to be given equal, if not more, important. So all the sound designers that I've worked with, sound people that I've worked with, and I've worked with some very interesting people, Alok De, Kunal, Ranganath, a lot of other guys that I've worked with. They have really they have seen how anal I am about sound, and I try to involve them as I start shooting. I don't wait till I finish my shoot to start telling them, okay. In fact, I start sharing scenes with them. I start putting it in their heads. I'm looking at a certain sound like this. So even if it's roughly edited, I'll start sharing with them. So this is what I started doing earlier on. And especially if it's sync sound, I try and get get the sound designers sync guy to work on the sync dialogues upfront so that there are no surprises later. So I involve them on a much earlier stage. And so that they are also living the film with me the way I'm kind of shooting as I'm going forward. They're also kind of seeing the progress as we go ahead, so that they can also contribute. They can also come back and give me some ideas on what can be done. So that has really helped shape the design for sound. And I am very in love about sound. I'm someone I really push hard to create a very unique sound experience with every film that I've done. I've tried with my music composers, with the sound designers, with the sound engineers, with the final mix. I'll give you an example with Wazir. The final mix was happening in December, and Jan was the release. Final was happening in December, and I had made the pass. I had done everything. December 25th, I was getting married, and December 19th, 20th, we're still working on the sound. And I'm getting calls from Kerala to come for the wedding, saying that aa jao yaar, shaadi kar lo. So
I'm for the main act in that wedding.
Yeah. So but I just didn't have the heart to let go of Wazir, because I was like in the last stages of fine tuning the sound of Wazir and everything. So I finished it, and just as I planned to leave, Vinod sir decided to come to the sound studio. He said, मैं बैठ के sound देखता हूँ, तू जा शादी कर ले. So I said, आप बैठने वाले तो फिर मैं भी बैठता हूँ. So I delayed my trip even 3 more days so that I could sit with him, so that he doesn't change anything that I had already done in the sound. So I sat with him, and I made sure that nothing that I had kind of worked on the sound gets tampered with. But he was so sweet. He worked on it with me, and yes, of course, there are some scenes we went back and forth on, but we worked together, and everything was 99% the way I wanted, except for the last reel. So the last reel was left, and it was my flight on that day, and I just didn't have the heart to leave that last reel. So, but I had to catch up. If I didn't take that flight, my parents would have disowned me. मेरी शादी नहीं होती थी. तो वो last reel मैंने विनोद सर के भरोसा छोड़ दिया. But throughout the flight, as I landed, I kept calling and said कि ये moment में क्या किया, इसमें क्या किया, इसमें क्या किया, and I told my AD to phone पे record करके मेरे को भेज. So I kept checking till the day of my wedding. I was still checking the sound. So this is just to tell you how anal I'm about sound. I can't just let go.
It's quite evident, Vijay. I mean, the films that I have watched yours, it's quite evident. I mean, you feel that you have put in a lot of heart in that, and that's why I somehow felt that these films are really connected with each other in its tone and its
it's not really meant as a trilogy, but if I don't know, I guess someone else also told me that because death plays a common part in most of it, so there's like feels like a companion piece. but Dubara came in the middle. Though a lot of people didn't see Dubara. Dubara had nothing to do with that. So that was something that I was trying to break away from my regular way of telling stories, and it was not really dark, but yet it was kind of dark. But so I guess watch whenever you get the time.
Thank you. Bejoy, before we end the session, I just wanted to take, two small questions from Facebook. So Swati Chug, who was watching the session, said that, "Hi Bejoy, I'm from the same school as you and I remember you doing great stand-up comedy in school." You did theatre as well. Wow, Bejoy, even I'm discovering things about you.
I was a class joker. I used to just look for a opportunity to go and perform.
When did that switch from being an actor to a director happen, and how?
It happened in school only. I used to grab my classmates and actually direct scenes of movies that I'd seen the night before. So my parents are massive movie buffs. So we used to watch so many movies. I'm in movies because of them only. So any movie that I'd seen the night before, the next day in recess, I used to grab these couple of friends of mine. I used to direct a scene with them. I used to explain the scene to them and actually direct, make them perform and watch it and correct them. So वो कीड़ा तो तभी काट लिया था. Then of course in college, then I enrolled in theatre, and theatre helped me tell my stories. So जो Gateway बोल रहे हैं ना, वो Getaway was my first play that I did. That's why my company is called Getaway. So that was the first play that I wrote and directed.
Meenakshi Shetty, who's a well-known, reputed programmer and also film critic, wants to know, how is the sensibility and approach of filmmaking in South India fundamentally different from Bollywood?
South India is huge. So you're talking about 4 different industries there. 4 or more than 4 actually.
Yeah.
So I can't really generalize and talk about it. I can only talk about Tamil and Malayalam because I worked there. And between Tamil and Malayalam also there is a massive shift in the way they work. So and in terms of the working culture, the discipline is very different. Like for example, in Malayalam, it's almost like a factory setting, in the sense that they churn out films very quickly. They shoot a film in, like, say 20-25 days. They'll do the edit in, say, 2 months. Within a month they'll do the sound. Within 4 months max, they can release a film. So they're that fast at it. They're good at churning. That's why most of the actors end up doing some 3-4 films a year. Most of the technicians end up doing 3-4 films a year. So Malayalam has got that thing of, I remember when I was shooting in Kerala, they used to tell me, when I used to just finish shooting a scene and be very happy with, ki haan yaar, acha scene ban gaya. So the local technicians say ki kitna slow hai aap, like you're very slow. I said, why? Acha to kitna fast to kiya humne. They said, nahi, we have a system here. Before breakfast 3 scenes. और यहाँ पे हम लोग लंच पे खत्म हो गया, 1 सीन खत्म हुआ है. तो जैसे कि बिफोर ब्रेकफास्ट 3 सीन्स खत्म होना चाहिए. So that's the pace they work with. So that's something I learned from there, and they're used to that. And not that they'll compromise on the quality or the work gets done. They are used to working in that speed because they are prepped hard enough, and they know, everybody knows their job well enough to know and deliver and land on time. So that's something I found very different, which is not the same here. Here it's very different. यहाँ पे I think it's very easy to bash Bollywood and say कि यहाँ तो हम लोग actor के लिए wait करते रहते हैं. ऐसा सब नहीं है. Bollywood also has its own way of working, and it all varies from people to people. But yeah, fundamentally, the working culture, the discipline is very different. Both in Tamil, Malayalam, Hindi, it is very different. It's not the same at all. It's interesting when you have people from different industries coming together to work on a film. Then it becomes a good mix.
Thank you so much, Bejoy. I also want to tell you, I want to tell everyone in the room, and of course people on Facebook, because Mini Mathur also joined, Vasan Bala joined, Shakun Batra joined, everyone came in, and Vasan he didn't have a question to ask, but he was like Babu, the opening, the entry scene, so he had stuff to say, which I'll send to you and share, of course. But I also wanted to say that, Bejoy is a storehouse of trivia. Like, he knows trivia that nobody else does. So we are going to make.
I want to say something about Vasan.
Go for it.
So Khoya Khoya Chand, because Mikey did Khoya Khoya Chand, Mikey wanted me to direct a music video for Khoya Khoya Chand months after Shaitan had released and everything. So I did a music video. I directed a music video for Shaitan.
It's lovely.
For Khoya Khoya Chand, the black and white music video, which, by the way, was like we were doing a test. because I was already planning David, and David, one story was going to be black and white. So that's why I shot Khoya Khoya Chand in black and white, because one story of David was going to be shot in black and white. So I was shooting this Khoya Khoya Chand video, black and white, in canvas in Lower Parade, Phoenix Mills. And Vasan had come to set to meet Madhi, to meet the cameraman, to just say hello or to come chat with him on a project or something. And I was taking a shot, and suddenly I wanted someone to just stand in the frame to open the door or something like that. I said, Vasan, ek minute khada ho jana hai, please khada ho ja. And my AD quickly went and gave him a costume, and Vasan actually stood there and opened the door. In the shot, you can see Vasan and my AD opening the door to the club. And he was such a sweetheart, and I didn't even, it didn't even strike me at that time that I was actually making, ये director है यार, अभी कांस जाके आया है, उसको मैंने खड़ा करके बोला चलो तुम खड़ा हो जा, and he was so sweet, and अभी खड़ा हो गया और door खोल रहा है shot में. He was such a sweetheart. मैं उस दिन से मैं वासन का fan हूँ. सबसे.
वासन के बहुत सारे fans हैं. Vasan does that very often, really helps, is very generous. And of course, he was the person who did the first session of Dial M for Films.
Fab session.
Which was a fab session. So please just go back.
And the benchmark that high कि हम लोग सबको tension आ गया. सब लोग reschedule करने का सोच रहे थे.
And also the second thing that you should know about Bejoy before you leave is that Bejoy is almost like a gateway, not getaway, but gateway to of South Indian cinema for a lot of people. So Mini actually came in and said, and she was saying that why didn't you do a session about introducing people to, sort of some of the best cinema that is made there. Joy, first of all, thank you so much for doing this and for giving us this much time. I want to thank everyone for joining us today. And like I keep saying at the end of every session, please send us feedback. We are building this as we go along. We've also built this module, which was supposed to happen on ground, sort of during the pandemic, and kind of, have tried to create value. But if there's anything that you want us to speak about, if there are any ideas that you have, we are here. We want to do this like for as much time as people are interested in cinema and MAMI survives. So thank you so much, and look forward to hearing from you. Thank you, everyone. Bye.
Bye.
Bye, Bejoy. Thank you.
Bye.